can't say a damn thing, fake why. I can't say a damn.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Knicks Daily here back. Today I want to talk about Mitchell Robinson. He re-signed with the Knicks on a 4-year, $16 million contract. That's incredibly efficient considering what Mitchell Robinson brought to the Knicks specifically last season. I'm looking at a guy who he played in a career-high 72 games, started 62 of them. He averaged just 8.5 points, but he shot 76.1%. And he was a huge reason. Well, he basically was the reason why the Knicks gave up the least amount of points in the paint. The Knicks were also 11th in terms of points per possession. Mitchell Robinson, he doesn't score the basketball unless it's obviously an alley-oop or a putback, which some of you might be like, the Knicks should go out and try to get Miles Turner. They should try to get a big man who can defend but also can stretch the floor. But at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with that because the Knicks last season struggled offensively. There was multiple reasons for that. Obviously, efficiency. Julius Randle and RJ Barrett were extremely inefficient, and at least in terms of true shooting percentage. RJ Barrett played the whole season at 21 years old, so we expect that. He's young. Even though he's in his, played in his third season, he's a young guy. Julius Randle, we do expect more, especially after he was second-team All-NBA, but that's besides the point. Back to what I was saying. So besides Coach Thibodeau's just incredibly predictable offense, the Knicks' big men were who? You had Mitchell Robinson, you had Nerlens Noel, and then you had like Taj Gibson and Jericho Sims. Not one of those guys can shoot the basketball. So when you have an offense that isn't predictable or is predictable, and then you have four centers, your big men that can't shoot, it makes sense why your team's going to struggle. And I just thought of this. Another reason why the Knicks struggled was they didn't have the right rotations. They didn't have a good offense. They didn't have the right rotations. Quentin Grimes, Cam Reddish, Emmanuel Quigley, Obi Toppin. A lot of people, and I'm talking about Knicks fans, say that the end of the year for the Knicks didn't mean anything because it's April basketball. But that isn't true. Emmanuel Quigley, to me, shouldn't be discussed in any trades. I would trade him at the right price, but at the same time, if you guys want to get DeJounte Murray, if you want to get, we weren't putting Quigley in a trade for Murray because it was Gallinari, a salary filler, of course, and then, the picks. But we were able to get Jalen Brunson without having to give up any assets. Salary, sure, but look at the Knicks guards last season. Kemba Walker and Alec Burks. Would you rather pay Jalen Brunson, who is, significantly better than those guys, and it's not even an overpay. It was basically, do you want to pay Kemba and Burks or do you want to pay Jalen Brunson? And the Knicks are still extremely flexible moving forward with Jalen Brunson's contract. They can certainly still give RJ Barrett an extension of around 28 to 30 million. It'll probably be around 30 million. And they'll still be able to, again, be flexible in free agency. The more I think about it, and this isn't coming from any sort of media or any sort of news, it's just my own interpretation. The New York Knicks will be competing for a championship next season. Will the Knicks win the championship? No, absolutely not. But I do think that the Knicks will be able to at least compete with any single team in the East. The Boston Celtics, the Knicks have played them well. The Boston Celtics obviously are a much better team, but the Knicks, they have an elite defense. The Knicks have an elite defense. The Knicks were missing one thing, a point guard. And the player that will benefit the most off of Jalen Brunson is Mitchell Robinson, and that's the focal point of this video. So if you guys haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I cover the Knicks here daily on the channel. You can also find me over at Swaggy, where I post NFL and MLB. I post every single thing. I even post WWE. But if you want to go check that out, man, feel free. But let's get into the notes that I wrote for this video, man. So as I mentioned, Mitchell Robinson, he's going to score off of putbacks, dump-offs and lobs. He's not going to provide a jump shot. One thing that Mitchell Robinson does do, though, is dribble handoffs. He doesn't just stand around the paint. And Mitch can dribble the basketball. And Mitch technically can shoot, but that's just not his role. We don't need that to be his role. That's why we brought in Isaiah Hartenstein, who, at the top of my head, I believe in the last 10 games of the season, shot 52.7% from three. And he was actually better at defending the paint than Mitch was, statistically speaking. Obviously, he's not a better defender than Mitch, but if you're talking about percentage shots allowed in the paint, I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein below 50%. Think about that. Isaiah Hartenstein was contesting shots around the rim, around the paint, I guess, and less than half of them went in. That is ridiculous. And the Knicks got this guy on a 2-year deal. Him, Sims, and Mitchell Robinson, I don't know how that's going to work, but that's always a good thing when you have too much talent to understand how it's going to work. That's never a bad thing of how you're going to make guys fit. So the fact that the Knicks went out and got Hartenstein, Jalen Brunson, and obviously re-signed Mitchell Robinson, and they're going to develop guys like Grimes, quickly Cam, Sims. I mean, the Knicks are in an incredible spot. This is, for those of you that don't know, the Knicks were my first ever team that I really liked. They basically got me into basketball. It wasn't long ago. It was around 2010, of course, around the time when they traded for Melo. So that's why I'm a huge Carmelo Anthony fan, because, he's traded to the Knicks. But I don't think I've ever been this excited about the Knicks. Maybe besides in 2013. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was in 8th grade. But the Knicks had a squad that year. It's unfortunate that the injuries, man, against Indiana. Like I said, I remember that. We ended up beating Boston as well. Really, really confusing series. You guys know if you remember. And obviously I remember like Linsanity and all that crazy stuff. But the Knicks never really had like a championship team. That's just the facts about it. Like right now, the Knicks don't have a championship team, but I feel like they are gearing up towards one, because Brunson and RJ Barrett, that's just like exactly what the Knicks need. They need a point guard that can facilitate, can run the pick and roll. Brunson didn't run a lot of pick and roll last season, but when he did, he was really good at it. And obviously his numbers went up without Luka. And in the playoffs, he elevated his game. So that's what the Knicks need. And they got him. I mean, Brunson will be 29 by the time his contract expires. So not only are they paying for a pretty good premium point. I mean, Jalen Brunson's a premium point guard, dude. He's really good. And I didn't really know too much about Brunson. I watched him play, but I didn't understand how much he really meant to the Mavs and how much he will mean to the Knicks. So the fact that the Knicks already have a good defense, they've got good role players, good young talent. They've got Tom Thibodeau, and now they've got a point guard. So who knows what can happen, man? Who knows? I mean, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Heat, all those teams, I don't see the Knicks beating them. But who knows? Like, what if RJ Barrett does become an all-star next season? What if Julius Randle gets back to his second-team All-NBA self? He's already in incredible shape. I'm sure you guys have seen the offseason, photos, things like that. I just feel like the Knicks are in a really good spot, because even if the Knicks do like lose in the first round, which I really hope doesn't happen, but even if they do, it's an improvement from last season. But they have their picks. Like, of course, you guys know this. The Knicks can go out and trade for Donovan Mitchell. The Knicks can trade for not any. Like, the Knicks aren't getting Kevin Durant, but the Knicks can go out and get Donovan Mitchell. So the fact that the Knicks are going to make the playoffs this season, and they potentially could have got Donovan Mitchell, I mean, it has to mean something. I mean, I know a lot of people like to say the Knicks are kind of in the middle, like mediocrity. I don't think the Knicks are. I think the Knicks are trending upwards, and I think in 2 to 3 years, the Knicks will be a serious threat to win a championship. I don't understand how anyone could think otherwise. The only way I could see like an argument for the Knicks is they don't have a superstar, but that's my point. It's like RJ Barrett. I mean, you're looking at a multi-time all-star. Like RJ Barrett, the sky's the limit for him. He's done things that no one else is. Like, name me a player 21 or younger that scored 30 points or more than RJ Barrett. The answer is none. Like, RJ Barrett is doing something right. He's also guarding the best wing on the other team. So like RJ Barrett does a lot. He even playmakes, and the efficiency is the knock against Barrett. But now you got Brunson. Like, so now RJ can kind of chill a little bit on offense, because RJ does everything, man. So like the Knicks are in a good spot. But I know the focal point is Mitchell Robinson. So we'll get back to him. I mentioned the pick and roll. Brunson's just going to make things easier for Mitch, easier buckets. Of course, you had like Alec Burks playing point guard last season, and banged up Kemba Walker, which wasn't good for Mitch. But as I said in the beginning of the video, Mitchell Robinson still shot 76.1% on 8.5 points. I know Mitchell Robinson doesn't score 10 points very often, and people look at that and they're like, man, come on. But Mitchell Robinson is the Knicks defense. He's why the Knicks gave up the fewest points in the paint. I mean, this dude's only 24 years old, and now you've got a legit star-level point guard. in New York. And I don't mean all-star, but I mean Jalen Brunson's going to be a star for the Knicks. There's no question about it. Jalen Brunson's better than Lonzo Ball. The Knicks, of course, could have went after Lonzo, and they didn't. And Lonzo's a good player, but I just think Jalen Brunson is kind of what the Knicks need. He gives them toughness, and we know he can play in the playoffs. Like if Jalen Brunson was on the Knicks the year before last, they would have beat the Hawks. No one's going to argue that. No one should argue that. It's factual. So let's talk about Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm kind of over talking about Mitchell Robinson for now. I mean, and by the way, guys, the Knicks were 25th in points per possession. And the reason for that was because, again, they didn't have a lot of, I guess, versatility. I mean, a lot of reasons. There are a lot of reasons to why that is, but mostly it was because the bigs couldn't really stretch the floor and were one-dimensional. Isaiah Hartenstein is not one-dimensional, and let me give you a quick breakdown on him. So Isaiah Hartenstein, he averaged last season 8.3 points, about 5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, and 1.1 blocks per game. He shot 62.6% from the field, and he played in under 18 minutes a game. But in the last 10 games of the season, Hartenstein averaged 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 4.6 assists on 52.9% from three. So the Knicks went out and they got a stretch big, but he's not just a big that can shoot. I had no idea of this statistic until now, and I'm sure you guys may or may not have known this, but if you didn't, Isaiah Hartenstein, he had a 47.5%, how would I phrase this statistic? Basically, dunks and layups when Hartenstein was the closest defender, 47.5% of them went in, and that was second in the NBA. So Hartenstein, he's young. Hartenstein's another, 24-year-old in his mid-20s. He can shoot. He can defend the paint, which is crucial. I mean, Tom Thibodeau, obviously, that's the most important part to his defense. You say we want about Tom Thibodeau. I don't want him coaching the Knicks next season. He will be coaching the Knicks next season. But one thing that you can't knock him for is his defense, specifically protecting the rim. I mean, yeah, sure, Mitchell Robinson was a huge reason why the Knicks gave up the fewest points in the paint, but it was also because of Coach Tibb and his system that he implements. It's very good. And the Knicks didn't really have the perimeter defense. I mean, they were still, what did I say? What did I say? 11th in terms of points per possession, which is crazy because the Knicks perimeter defense was so streaky and god awful at times. It was good at times too. RJ Barrett basically helps that. But yeah, I mean, the Knicks definitely need to focus on, being more consistent on the perimeter in terms of defense. And they definitely need to keep down the fouls. The Knicks fouled a ton, especially Robinson. But outside of that, that's the video, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed Knicks Daily here. You can also find me over at Swaggy. And yeah, I hope you guys have a blessed day. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Do you think the Knicks can compete for a championship? Not saying they're in the same tier as those other teams in the East because they're not. But do you think the Knicks can seriously go out there and turn some heads and maybe take a team to 6 or 7 in the second round? That would be amazing. Wouldn't be the best case scenario, but it would be. I would take that second round. I mean, we didn't make the play-in last season. This season, we go out there and take it. A championship contender to 7 games in the second round. How can you not take that? And the Knicks are only going to get better. Every year, the Knicks are going to improve. The front office seems to be doing the right thing, and it's the players that they continue to develop. Sky's the limit, but I'm out, bro. Peace. Oh, yeah, one more thing. Okay, so one, join the Discord, as you guys saw in the beginning of the video, but also no one's complained about this, surprisingly, but I know I show this basically a variety of the same clips in the videos. So I have 6 monetized channels on YouTube all linked together. And if I get 3 copyright strikes, then I lose them all, which would not be ideal. So I already have one, the actual Dallas Cowboys gave me one. And yeah, so I don't really know how I'm going to do this. Yeah, a lot of face cams. I don't want to just show you guys my actual face because I feel like that's going to be really boring. But at the same time, I don't want to show the same clips. But if you guys have any ideas, let me know. I wish I could, hit up the Knicks and be like, can I start showing some highlights, man? That'd be sick. But that's not going to happen. So, yeah.